Hello, it's time for Japan Outpost. I'm Yuka House. Today I'm at Stockport. In fact, it's folk festival going on today. So behind me there are lots of folk dance and song going, and lots of noise. I'm going to visit a bookstore just over there to see some exhibitions. So please join me. Yeah. So, can I have your name, please?
Hi, I'm Helena Gaudikova.
So you're from?
I'm from Czech Republic and especially from Prague, from the capital.
So may I ask what you're doing there?
In Prague, I worked in the National Museum, where they have a wonderful collection of Japanese arts and crafts. So I've been dealing with curating Japanese arts and crafts for over 3 years.
Wow, so you're a curator there?
Used to be a curator there,
Wow.
yes.
So that means they already had lots of Japanese, collection of Japanese art?
Yes, there is a magnificent collection of Japanese art. There's over 25,000 items of Japanese arts and crafts, mainly dating to Edo and Meiji periods.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know anything about it, but why do you think they collected them?
Mainly these were collected by Bohemian travelers in the 19th century, in the latter half of the 19th century.
Really?
Yes. And these would travel to Japan and collect basically whatever they came across and found
Only Bohemian travelers in the Slovakia, or
in what used to be, it's a bit of a difficult history.
Yeah.
So what now we call the Czech Republic used to be Czechoslovakia, and even before that, it used to be part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So Bohemia refers to the geographical area that is part of the Czech Republic today. So when I say Bohemian travelers, what I mean is travelers during the 19th century where the Czech lands were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So the founder of the museum where I used to work funded his fellow friends, travelers, to travel all around the world and bring various items, arts and crafts. And some of these would travel to Japan. And some of them would draw a lot of inspiration from Japan and would return there.
So they did bring stuff from Japan then?
Yes, they brought a lot of stuff from Japan, and basically that's how the collection started.
How interesting!
Yeah.
By Bohemian travelers, that is very, very interesting.
There has been quite a number of these, and they're being researched quite a lot during over the past number of years. So there are new publications being published about these, and it's very, very interesting.
How the Japanese arts are accepted there?
I think that's a very tricky question, because Japanese art was loved and admired mainly after the Japanese infatuation broke out in Paris. So that was very similar in the Czech lands. But I think Japanese art was not always interpreted in a proper way, because if you imagine travelers coming to Japan from what used to be the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they wouldn't really have any education about what Japanese art is about, and they couldn't have possibly. So they were basically exploring, and they had not much of the background knowledge. So when you go through the old archives in the museum and you read the inscription that they wrote, or the descriptions of the items that they provided us with, you can tell that they didn't really have much of an idea what they brought, and it's only up to the subsequent generations to interpret what they actually brought and put it into focus.
Very interesting.
And it's
so they didn't know what they are really bringing back.
In many cases, for example, we've been with a colleague of mine. We've been researching the Japanese arts. Japanese Buddhist art collection within the museum's collection, and this one constitutes of quite a number of pieces, which there was no information provided of what they were, and it's evident that the people that brought them, they only bought them because they thought they were beautiful, but they had no idea what they actually depict, because of course understanding the Buddhist pantheon, that's very demanding. So it is demanding even today, and for them it was absolutely impossible to understand images of what deities they would actually bring.
So maybe they just intuitively
Yes.
got impressed. They thought it was beautiful, so they brought back with that.
Exactly.
I think that's a true art style, though.
It is.
You
yes.
don't have to, shouldn't have to have knowledge to understand or appreciate. I would think so.
Yeah.
But
That's why you
very-
have curators to interpret these
very interesting. So, as a curator, exactly what kind of thing you did, or what were you
So
dealing with?
I basically worked with several sub-collections within the collection, and one of these areas that I researched was the set collection of the Japanese Buddhist art. Subsequently, me and my colleague researched the collection of Japanese traditional toys, which is quite an exceptional collection to have because there's not many collections of such outside Japan itself.
And those are brought back by the Bohemian traveler too?
Yes, and that is even more fascinating because these travelers basically had no idea that they were actually bringing back toys. In many of these, in many cases, these items were just considered to be souvenirs. Or
So they didn't know they were toys.
they didn't know they were toys.
Oh, interesting.
So it basically wasn't until me and my colleague brought up the idea of maybe, these shouldn't be categorized as souvenirs. They should be categorized as toys. And that's how the collection was formed.
How interesting.
And of course there is a magnificent collection of woodblock prints, ukiyo and nishikie in the collection. So there are thousands of prints, which of course they were very easy to bring back from Japan. So basically every traveller who went there brought a collection of these. So that's another area.
Are they from Edo era or Meiji?
Most of them come from late Edo and then Meiji. So it's a mixture. And we do have some old ones as well, but most of them are late Edo and Meiji.
How interesting. So I understand you had a published book.
Yes, there are books that were published in English about the collections that I mentioned. So this one is about the Japanese Buddhist art from the collection of the museum, which was published bilingually in Czech and English, and it has loads of wonderful pictures as well, photographs. So if anyone is interested, this one is definitely good to have a look at. Another one is about the collection of toys, which was published in English.
I like the title.
Yes, and we have a Japanese version of it as well.
Wow, I see. That's perfect. That's good.
So I think this is quite a lovely book because it shows the history of the collection, the collectors, and also it has loads of wonderful photographs of the toys, which is quite lovely to see.
That's unusual for a museum to have a Japanese toys.
It is indeed.
Excellent.
It is indeed. And it was my great pleasure to cooperate with some museums in Japan, including the Japan Toy Museum in Himeji.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, that's right. And they were absolutely wonderful, great inspiration and great help. And I loved visiting them.
So
and
did
they
you go to
contributed.
Japan to visit them?
Yes, several times.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, amazing.
So they contributed massively to this book because they pointed my attention to things that I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. So
How
that was
interesting.
brilliant. And also there's the magazine of the museum, which covers various areas from arts of Asia, America, and such, and Africa. And basically in every issue there is an article about Japan, and it's all in English and it's available online. So if anybody is interested, you can just Google the webpage of the museum and have a look through.
And this is
And this is a catalogue of the collection, which is on a DVD.
collection of Japanese art.
Yes,
Wow.
collection of Japanese art. So this was published 2013, and
very
this one includes a vast collection of not only the arts and crafts but also photography. So loads of Meiji images, photographic images, and also the complete toy collection. So you can find basically a catalogue of the complete toy collection and the Buddhist collection and a number of others on this DVD.
How interesting.
So that one can also be bought online, and it's
is that right?
Yes, that's right, and it's a very, very interesting source, and it's mostly bilingual, so you can get English versions of most.
Would you tell me the name of the museum again?
So it's the National Museum of the Czech Republic, and it has many different parts, and the part that the Japanese collection is in is called the Nauvrstek Museum. But if you Google the National Museum, you will definitely get
Oh,
into
so the different smaller museums.
like a section, like a subsection of the National Museum, basically.
Oh, I see.
And of course, in the Czech Republic, there are other institutions dealing with Japanese art, and another major one would be the National Gallery in Prague, which also has a Japanese collection, and they do have a number of wonderful publications, including a publication on the influence of Japanese art on Czech art. So
tell me about it then.
it's actually a friend of mine who, the curator of the National Gallery, so it would be best for you to talk to her. But unfortunately, she doesn't live in England. So.
Easily, simply, what can you say?
It's basically quite a groundbreaking research showing the influences of Japanese art on Bohemian art or Czech art of basically the late 19th century and early 20th century. And I think it's fair to say that basically the whole of Europe has been influenced by Japanese art at this time. So it's only natural that also, Czech artists would be interested. Nobody has really mapped to what extent they have been interested so far. So there has been an exhibition last year covering this area, and now there is a major publication also published about it, which is also available in English. So this is basically an introduction to in how many ways Japanese arts influenced the arts of the area of, Bohemian Czech lands within the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Is it mainly on the paintings? Or
it's not only painting. Painting is quite major, but there is also sculpture and some crafts. So, but you are right saying that I think graphic arts and painting would be the most massive area of interest.
It's very impressive. How did you become a creator?
Well, I think my original interest in Japan came about due to the fact that I went to Japan as a child, and that's how I formed the connection to Japan. And I just, you know how it is with Japan. Once you get to know the country, you never stop loving the country. So that's how my interest formed, and because I studied art history and also painting, so I'm an art historian and an artist as well. So I basically, both in my theoretical work and in my practical arty work, I have always drawn inspiration from Japan in some way, and that's why I was very happy to become the curator of the Japanese collection, and that's why even nowadays in my painting I can see a lot of influences from Japanese art as well.
Was it easy to become a curator?
No, I don't think it's very easy to become a
curator. I didn't think so, so I was impressed. Yes. Was there lots of competition?
There's definitely a lot of competition, and it was a great privilege, and I have enjoyed it massively.
So you are chosen basically?
Yes.
Not wonderful.
I'm the chosen one.
Well, excellent. Okay. Oh, hello.
Oh, hi.
You are?
What's your name?
Emily?
This is my daughter Emily.
So you're joining?
Yes.
Okay, so Helena, would you tell me more about these beautiful paintings behind us?
So this is my latest exhibition now on in Stockport at the room at the top, and this is a collection of paintings called 20 Paintings from Prague and Japan. So as you can tell, there is an inspiration drawn from Japan in it, although you could say you can't really see any explicit motives taken from Japan in these paintings, which is also true. However, I tend to be very much inspired by Japanese aesthetics and by calligraphy. So I do see quite a lot of links to various aspects of Japanese art in my work. And I think this might be because I think this influence by Japan it is very deeply rooted in me, because I first went to Japan when I was 9, and I've spent quite an extensive period of time in there, a number of months going to Japanese school, and that was a quite deep and impressive thing for me, because at that time I couldn't speak any Japanese at all, and it was my first encounter with the culture, and I think spending all this time in Japan has really become very deeply rooted in me, and it brought me close to issues that you only experience once you are in Japan, and the way you experience the culture and the people and the way things are perceived, the way things are talked about or are not talked about, and the way beauty is perceived and mentioned in everyday life, that is something which I think you just can't get it as a tourist. You have to be in Japan for a while to actually get a grasp of it, and I feel very privileged that I could do this, and it has become a very substantial part of myself.
So you think you're slightly different from usual
I'm different.
Czech people?
I'm different.
No, the influence you got from Japan
Yes,
in early ages.
I think so. I think so, especially because I was a child. I was not much older than my daughter now, and at that time, things that you experience just become so much more part of you than what, things that you encounter as an adult. And I think Japanese culture is so strikingly different to what you're used to as if you grow up in Central Europe, and then you suddenly find yourself in Japan. It's also strikingly different, and I think it brings so many, it brings enormities that you just can't imagine before, and it has transformed me very deeply. And I think because I've always been brought up in a very international way, and my family is quite scattered all over the world, I don't think I'm really capable of identifying with any given nationality. So I have become a kind of a mixture, and that is also very important to me.
I see. So now you are in the UK. Will you tell me your plans now?
That's a very good question.
Or some art-wise or Japanese art-related way?
Well, what I would like to do is I'd like to continue in producing artwork, and also some research work related to Japanese arts. And I've always been intrigued by the question of how is Japanese art interpreted within, Euro-American culture, which has been quite a research topic for, over the last years. And I love to investigate these things both on the theoretical level, research-wise, and also in my own artwork. So I'd like to concentrate further on how to bring Japan into our context, and what are the things that are universal in the arts and in the overall approach to life. When you compare Japanese society and European society, what is it that we share that is universally human, and what is it that is so specifically culturally different that we can't really translate it? And maybe it is good to translate some of these things, and maybe some of these things are just impossible to grasp. And I love to deal with these topics, so I definitely like to do some more of this.
I see. That sounds extremely interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for today.
My great pleasure. Anytime. Lovely meeting you.